I'm Sam Mitchell, and these are my stories. Howdy, folks. Having a good day today. Let me be the first to welcome you to Autism Rocks and Rolls. Now, before we begin, I must note that I am not a doctor or a psychiatrist. If your son or daughter needs to be diagnosed with autism or he thinks or she does think, please see a physician. I only do this based on my experiences. I also do not own the right to this music. Both were found on YouTube and was published on February 2014 and January 2017. I also have a website for you guys to check out. I'll drop the link below, but it's for my Autism Rocks and Rolls, and it tracks my journey, offers my podcasts and speaking services. It gives you a chance to check out some pretty cool podcasts that I was actually a guest on. So I will attach it, like I said, at the bottom and this episode. And be sure to check it out, people. It's a pretty good website. Also, I have a shout out I need to give. I have a shout out to the Rushmore podcast because they actually made a song for me, which I'm going to use for something in the near future. And it's still in the works, but in time I'll use it for a big project and I will attach it to my website. So Rushmore podcast, thank you. And thanks for that amazing song. All right. So now we got that through. Let's talk to our guest today. So today's guest, we got a big one. His name is Simon Majumdar. He is an author, travel, and food writer, and a well-known Food Network personality on shows such as Guys Grocery Games, Cutthroat Kitchen, Iron Chef, and Iron Chef America. Mr. Majumdar also supported the Center for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disorders in Orange County in a Cutthroat Kitchen episode. And that's a good episode, so I highly recommend seeing it. But now let's talk to him, actually. So, Simon, how are you today, man?
I'm well, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. So my first question
Good.
is, what does having a nephew with autism mean to you?
Well, to be honest, it means that it's something that's in my view, and a lot of people don't necessarily know what autism is. They hear the word and they don't understand how wide a spectrum it can cover. And so by having someone in our family who has autism, it gave me a kind of a view of it and made me more curious to go and find out more about it. And through the family, who have obviously been working with him through his life with autism since he was diagnosed anyway, it's helped me find out a lot more. I'm not an expert, just like you said, I'm not a doctor, but it makes me realize that there are a lot of, people in our society who have autism at different levels, and that there are lots of ways to support them and lots of ways to help them become very productive. A lot of people, are doing incredible things like you are with this podcast. So it's just made me a lot more conscious of autism as a part of everyday life for a lot of people.
Yeah, I got you. I bet it does too. I mean, we all have our own struggles. Each autism has their own different struggles, with one being social, with one trying to understand a different part of it.
Well, some people, obviously, and I remember going to a school once and spending time with my nephew, and we saw the whole spectrum there, and some young people had to be almost hidden away because anything that was bright lights or anything that overstimulated them caused a lot of distress. And other young men and women were a lot more able to be social and to react with me, ask questions, to help. And so what you saw is everywhere in between. And I think that's one of the battles, for want of a better word, when you talk about autism, is to explain to people that it doesn't mean one thing, that lots of people can have lots of different aspects of it, and that there are, and also to make people aware that there are programs, really good programs and facilities in education right through from being very young right through to adulthood that people can benefit from.
Gotcha. There are many different benefits to autism as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, a lot of times you will see people being able to be exceptionally talented in certain areas. And I, again, not being an expert on these things, I don't always understand how these things work. But the fact that there are some people who are really talented, whether they're talented artistically or mathematically, and they can, they have a huge amount to contribute. And I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, definitely. We all have our own talents. So what were your initial thoughts when you learned that your nephew had autism?
I don't think I had any kind of initial thoughts in any way. It's, he's just a person in our family. So he's a relative, and all of my relatives, whether it's in the UK with my birth family, as it were, or it's my in-laws, they're all different. everyone's different, and some people I like and some people I don't like, because that's true of all families. So I didn't really have any specific thoughts about it other than, you know, that he's just another part of our family who I love.
How do you think an autistic brain, based on your experience with your nephew, like operates?
I wouldn't be able to really comment on that. All I can comment on is interacting with people, and and having great conversations with him and talking, and just seeing how he reacts to the world. So I wouldn't be able to comment on how that kind of it operates, just because I'm not informed enough. So I think it's a little dangerous sometimes as an amateur, which I am, to try and offer those kind of comments. All you can do is talk about, and I don't want to talk about him personally, because obviously he's private with his own, so he has his own privacy. But I think it's what you just talk about are the people you meet, and I've met a number of people over the years who are autistic, and they have very different scopes. So all I don't think about it as a block. I try and think about them as individual people, which they are, and how I react to them as I would to any other person.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense, Simon. So now, what is the most rewarding and most difficult thing about someone having autism that you've seen based on your experiences?
I think sometimes for people who aren't aware of autism, sometimes that it can be obviously frustrating because thought processes are different, and reactions can be difficult or different. But also when you see the abilities of people who have autism, and you see the things that they can achieve, then, and I've seen that obviously through the nonprofit that I did some work with, then that's the most rewarding. You see that, like many people, that people have limitations in life that are caused by things outside their control, and some have it through physical disability, some have it through other reasons. But when you go and see what they can actually achieve, then I think that's the most rewarding. When you go and see, I remember one event that was, I think, based around tango, and they were teaching people using dance and tango, and teaching people, and then artistic, and using arts and music to help people communicate, that you see people are really extraordinary. So I think that's the kind of, the rewards are, despite what some people might consider a disability, for want of a better word, that you see people who are actually contributing a massive amount. And I think that's the kind of key conversation, is not to almost stop thinking about it as a disability, to think about it as people contributing differently.
What advice would you give to someone who just learned they had autism?
Well, again, it's very difficult for me to offer that kind of advice, just because I'm not an expert. And I'm just because I only know about this through family contact. So I think the key is to get good advice from medical advice, and anyone else who has, and there are lots of organizations now who work towards this, and then to find out the programs, and to find out programs that can be tailored to match the situation that you are in, and people now will look at that very kind of seriously, and look at how they tailor a program. Some people might find a struggle a little bit more, because they might find they have social difficulties, but to find those programs, and I think that's the same whether it's for families or individuals, is to seek out the experts, and I'm certainly not one of those. So again, I wouldn't comment on that from a medical or a point of view, but just to go and find out the people. It's like anything, to be honest. It's not just that. If you're in any situation, go and find out someone who's really good at what they do, and ask for advice. And I think that's true in all situations, not just this one.
Or ask me for advice.
Yeah. Well, people who are working in that area, people who are doing, I'm sure there'll be people who listen to your podcast who want to go out and do their own podcast based on it. And what they should do is talk to you, because a lot of the issues that they'll face setting it up, whether it's issues of sound or getting it known, or other issues, that you will have been through them. So I think it's just really important for you to share your experience, and for other people to come along and ask you for your experience.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely helpful. I like to help people, at least.
Well, I think it's important if you do anything, in the same way. One of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is because hopefully some people will listen to it and they'll learn something about the things that I do, whether it's food TV or writing or anything else. So just go and find people who are good at what they do, and ask them. Most people will be very responsive, as long as you're polite and you ask respectfully, and most people will respond and try and help you. And they have with me in the past on TV shows or writing. If I've reached out to people, they're usually pretty good.
Definitely, yeah, man. Now, the reason why I found you is because of a show called Cutthroat Kitchen, and I would
Yes, indeed.
if you guys want to see that show, I'll post a link for maybe you guys to get the show, or like an Amazon Prime ordeal. Maybe I'll post that down below. But anyway, my question is, why did you become a judge on Cutthroat Kitchen?
Well, I've been doing a lot of judging for the Food Network before that. So I'd been on a lot of other shows. I'd been on Beat Bobby Flay and Iron Chef America and Next Iron Chef and a few other shows. So this was back in 2013. I was approached by the producers to be a judge on Cutthroat Kitchen. And one of my good friends, Alton Brown, was going to be the host. So, of course, I said yes, because he's one of the best. He's a really good guy. And I was lucky that show then turned out to be one of the biggest hits on the Food Network. And I got to do a lot of episodes over the next, 6 years. So maybe 5 years. But anyway, a lot of time. And so the crew became a good family, to me. They're really good friends, and I'm still close to a lot of them. A lot of them now work on other shows that I do. So I love that. So I can go on to set of Guy's Grocery Games. And a lot of the people who are either camera people or culinary people or audio people are people I've worked with before. The makeup people that I've worked with before. So it's been it was a real pleasure. So I guess the bottom line is I did it because they asked me, and I thought it'd be a really good show, and it turned out to be a fantastic show.
It was a fantastic show. We still watch it every night almost.
Good. Excellent. We're in what they call a hiatus right now, but I'm hoping they'll bring it back. And I get asked about it almost every day. People love watching that show.
Oh, it's addicting. It's addicting after like the 2 episodes. Can you describe Alton Brown, like just as a friend, like based on your friendship with him? Can you describe him a little bit?
Yeah, and again, I'm always conscious that I like to respect the privacy of people. So, but in terms of what he's like on television, he's probably the most smart person I've ever met in TV. Alton is incredibly kind of intellectually driven, always curious, always reading, always questioning. He's got a great sense of humor, a little mischievous, as you've seen when you're watching the shows. And we have a lot of conversations while we're filming shows about food history, or you don't get to see all the things in between the actual things where we have the cameras on us and we're just chatting. So from that point of view, and this actually goes back to what I said earlier, if I'm watching him, he's so good on television, and that's a very different thing. So there are some people in life who are very energetic, have great personality, but when the camera switches on, they just go flat. They don't look great on television. They're just not, good on television, even however brilliant they are. And there are other people who are just fantastic on television, and Alton is one of those. He kind of lights up when the camera is on a group of people and Alton Brown is there, then you're probably going to just be watching him. And so it's always great fun for me just to watch him perform, for want of a better word, because I learn so much from him. And even though I've been doing this for 10 years, I still think of him as like the professor of doing food television.
I can hear that. He does seem like it based on what I've seen on Cutthroat Kitchen. Now, what's Antonio and Jet Tila like, out of curiosity?
They're good pals. So we were the first 3 judges. They added Richard Blaze later, and he's terrific as well. But Antonio is really, very amazing palate, great judge, terrific judge. Though what people forget is, of course, we do different days. We film one episode a day, or we did. And so we never used to see each other very much, because I'd be in one day and the next day was Antonia, and then the next day was Jet, and then I'd be back. And so it wasn't so easy to see each other. Nowadays, we might see each other more often, in fact, because we judge together on Guy's Grocery Games, and there are 3 judges, and we've actually had, I think, an episode where it was me, Antonia, and Jet. Jet I've known for a long time, and I think he's really brilliant. Each one has a very different perspective when they look at the food. Jet and Antonia look at it very much as chefs, and although I cook for a living as well, I don't call myself a chef like them because I don't run a restaurant. So, but I look at it much more from traveling around the world. I've probably traveled a lot more than they have, so I have a different perspective. But they're just, they're good people. They've got, Antonio has fantastic restaurants. Jet has run great restaurants. They both do a lot for non-profits. They're just good people. But here's the thing: when we did the episode where I competed, and that's when I competed for the autism non-profit, they're very competitive. They both want to win really badly, and
I could tell that.
Yeah, and I don't care. I don't have a competitive bone in my body, so they were running around desperate to win. And I wanted to win for the non-profit. But I personally, I don't care. I didn't care about it. I wanted to get some money which we did. We got some money, even though I went out pretty early. But they're very competitive, and I'm not competitive at all. So that's the big difference between us.
Is that we got eliminated first? No, I'm kidding.
No, I did. Well, also because I just got back from, when we filmed that, I got back from New York, and I was exhausted, and I think it was only the second time I'd ever competed on a show. I don't compete very often because I'm too old to be running around like that. I let the young people do it. I'm too old. But I did a very bad job on that particular one. But then the next time I competed, there was a second one. I actually got through to the finale. So I didn't win, but I got through to the final. So I kind of redeemed myself a bit.
Good. You sounds like you did. So now you're a judge on Cutthroat Kitchen mainly, but what is the average day from a judge's perspective on Cutthroat Kitchen?
Well, it's a lot of what they call in television, hurry up and wait. So you arrive, the chefs who are competing will get there very early. It's all filmed over one day. The chefs will get there early, read the rules. They'll sign the rules to prove that they're going to follow them. So it's all done very seriously. Then I will come in once, just before they start cooking, and then I'm locked away in my trailer, my soundproof chamber, my trailer, which is all very comfortable. I have my my snacks and my kettle to make my cup of tea, and I just sit in there, and I have Wi-Fi, so I do all my emails and look after do a day's work while I'm in there. I have my computer, and then I'll go to makeup. Usually, if it's an average episode, I say average, if it's a regular episode rather, I will just have a range of clothes, a plaid shirt, a jacket, whatever. But sometimes it could be an episode where I have to dress up. If it's a themed episode, we did one that was like science fiction, so I was dressed as someone from Star Trek. We did another one where I was in a knight's uniform. We did all kinds of crazy stuff. So then I'll go to wardrobe and makeup, and then audio. So they'll come and put my earphone or my earbud in. Then they'll walk me to set, and that's just as they've finished the first round. So I'm not allowed anywhere near the stage until they've finished the first round. And then I walk down the steps, and that's the first time I get to see who the chefs are. It's the first time I get to see the dishes. I have no idea what challenge is. Literally all I get to say, and I say it at the beginning, I just care what's on the plate, and I taste it. And Alton just goes, this is Chef X, and he's cooked, and they tell me what they've cooked, or what she's cooked, and I judge it. And then I go, and then I'm hidden away again while they do the second cook and the third cook, and that's it. And you have to take it very seriously, because at the end of it, someone could walk away with, well, one person won $25,000. They didn't bid anything and they left with $25,000. So it's a long day, but it's really fun. I love doing it, but they can be quite long days. So you can sometimes, if for whatever reason, if the if the challenges have been really tough and they have to clear props, and you can get out of there pretty late. But most of the time they're really, the crews are really good. So it can be a long day, but it's a really fun day.
I bet you it is a fun day. What, you want to talk about the clown? That was a good one.
Yeah, that was, I didn't enjoy being in the clown outfit all day because it was very hot outside. It was like 100 degrees outside, and I'm walking around. And once they put it was a big wig, and that wig is stuck on to keep it on. So I had to I literally walked around the entire day dressed as a clown. There was no kind of getting in and out of the outfit. So I sat there at lunch. I sat there, all day in that clown outfit.
Well, I'll tell you this, Simon. You were the most beautiful clown I've seen.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as a compliment.
It was a compliment. So, when you saw the chefs, were there any interesting characters on Cutthroat Kitchen that you've ever met?
I think there are one or two. And here's the thing that sometimes I have to explain to people is I don't get to meet the chefs, so because they don't want me to. And although once or twice, and not very often, once or twice I'd come down the stairs and there'd be chefs there who I knew just because, I'm in the food business and if I've been to their restaurant. So I don't let that bother me because I don't mind telling them if their food's good or bad. And then obviously we did some all-star issues where we had, Alex Guarnacelli and Jeffrey Zakarian, and we had some of the very big names. So those are obviously great characters because I remember coming down and judging some of the famous people from the Food Network, and that was great fun. But in terms of the chefs who come through on the regular episodes, I don't really get to know them too much. I don't get to see their characters very much. So they're just really telling me about their food. So they're not allowed to kind of show too much character then. They're just telling me what they've cooked. So a lot of times I'll have chefs come up to me and go, "Oh, you judged me on this episode." And a lot of times, and I'm not being rude, I just don't remember them because, say I did 60 episodes, I'm guessing it was probably more, and there are 4 chefs, that's 240 chefs. That's a lot of chefs who I get to see. So often I don't remember them. And it's not, like I said, it's not being rude. I just don't remember.
Yeah, no one can remember more than 240 chefs. I can't remember that if I was you. I don't feel too bad.
Yeah, so it can be tough. And again, like I said, it's not being mean, but often for the chefs, it might be the first time they're on television, so they're going to remember it.
Yeah, definitely. I bet they would remember it. So now there are also sabotages on the show, obviously. That's a part of Cutthroat Kitchen. So did Alton tell you about any of the sabotages after the show was over, or?
Yeah, we did. And if you go on YouTube, you'll actually see what was called, I think it was called...
Oh, yeah, it was the after show. I remember that.
Yeah, so afterwards, Alton would bring me out, or the other judges, and he would go through all the challenges. And he would also get me to try some of the challenges. So that could be quite fun. If you go online, you'll see me trying cooking while bouncing on a trampoline or whatever the crazy challenge. And they got more crazy because they had a whole team who would come up with these crazy challenges. And after the show, then they'd bring me out. And that was the last thing. And that was always really fun because I had no idea. And then, he would ask me to guess who had got each of the sabotages. And sometimes it was obvious, and sometimes it wasn't at all.
Ah, I got you. Now, out of curiosity, when you saw the sabotages, were there any sabotages you just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they went through that, or like you just like OMG sabotages, I guess?
Oh, all the time. There were ones where people were blindfolded. There were ones where they had to cook on, tiny little. There was my favorite one of all was like a tiny little kids oven, like a little toy oven, and they had to sit down and maybe on a saucepan and cook on this tiny little oven.
Oh, you're talking about mini kitchen.
That was probably my favorite one. The mini kitchen was probably my favorite, and Jeffrey Zakarian, the Iron Chef, once cooked on that and actually turned out like this fantastic meal because He's an Iron Chef. And so that was one of my favorites. But I mean, some of them were really just, bonkers. I mean, they did one where it was almost like the inside of an aircraft, and they had them rocking back and forwards while they were cooking. They had some where they were on a seesaw and they were going up and down. I mean, they had all kinds of stuff. But it was fun to try. It was definitely fun to try afterwards.
I bet it was fun to try afterwards. You got the whole experience to yourself then. So, what do you miss about Cutthroat Kitchen? Because unfortunately, as we all know, the show got canceled. But is there anything that you miss about it?
Well, I miss what I call my family. We did 200 episodes, probably more, and so there was very little turnover of crew. So we had pretty much the whole same culinary department, same camera people, same sound people, same makeup people, same producers. Obviously, Alton was there the whole time. So you got to know each other very, very well. And so it's like the way I would explain it, it's almost like when you leave high school and you have all your friends, and then suddenly you go off to different schools or different colleges, or you go off to different jobs, and you don't really, they're your friends, but you don't get to see them as often. And so I think that's what I miss most of all. I mean, it was a great gig in terms of a job. It was wonderful. And I got, people got to know me like you through watching that. But most of all, I miss the people, because the people and it's true on all of them. It's same on Guy's Grocery Games. The thing that's most enjoyable about that is the crew, is the people. They're just the best, they're the best. And a lot of they work so hard. I mean, I'm on camera, so I come in a little later and I get treated in my nice cabin and all of my nice trailer and all of that. But a lot of these people are coming in really early in the morning. They work super hard. I mean, so hard. And then, they're there late at night taking everything down again. So I have so much respect for the crews who work in television, because they do all the hard work, and then I come and appear on camera and get some of the credit. But those are the people who do all the real work.
Yeah, I bet they do all the real work. We'll give a shout out to them, because I bet they work their butts off, according to you.
Well, also, some of them got known on camera too. So you might, if you've watched a lot of Cutthroat Kitchen, you might hear Alton refer to the Bobs.
Oh yeah, the Bobs. I remember them.
The people, the men and women so that stood for the Bring Out Boys. So they were the guys and some women who brought out all the props. So they were on the script. I think it was BOB, Bring Out Boys, and so they got christened the Bobs. And that's why they got referred to as the Bobs. And they became their own character on the show, the Bobs. So they were always silent. And Alton was always talking about kind of torturing the Bobs. And people kind of had their favorite Bob that they watched. And so they loved doing that. But that show was one of the kind of happiest shows backstage of any I've been on. And I think that's important. So if any of them are listening to this, thank you very much, because they made it I always used to love going on set and hanging around. I always used to just love going on same with Guy's Grocery Games now. I love just being up there. I love being on set and just chatting with them when I get time.
I bet. They seem like good people. Now, my other question, I also want to talk about honesty versus bluntness, because when you judge, what I admire and I work on these days is we autistic people struggle with being blunt and being honest, because we were told to tell the truth, but then there are times as we were told well, not the best time to tell the truth, but we are working on it, we just can't manage the time. But my question is, how do you manage being honest and blunt?
I think one should always try and tell the truth, but there are ways of managing how you tell the truth, and a lot of times it depends about who you're talking to as well. So here's the thing. If I'm talking to a very famous chef, say I was doing Iron Chef America, and I'm talking to Michael Simon or Alex Guarnacelli or Bobby Flay, I'm going to be more blunt with them, because quite frankly, they've heard everything. They've all got, like me, they've all got decent enough egos. They can take it. And I'm going to tell them exactly what I think of their food. So I got known initially as being quite tough on everyone, and I am even. But if I'm going on to Guy's Grocery Games, or if I'm going on to Cutthroat Kitchen, these are chefs who it's their first time on TV, often, not always, but sometimes, or they're not regulars on TV. They're just hardworking chefs going in restaurants and doing their thing. And so if I come in and I'm just mean to them for the sake of it, then it's just not fair. At the same time, I'm going to tell them what I think. So I try and tell them what's good about their dish, and I try and tell them what's not good, but how they could improve it. I might be more tough with some of the more well-known ones, but I never try and be mean to anyone. So, and maybe a lot of that is, I think with my English accent, maybe I sound more polite anyway. Maybe the accent helps, but I will tell people my honest opinion. And it's the same if I go into a restaurant as I do, well, not so much now because we're all in lockdown, but I would often have chefs come up to me if I have a meal afterwards. They want to chat to me because they know me from television or whatever. And they go, how was the food? And I always go, do you want me to be honest or do you want me to be polite? Because if they want me just to be polite, I go, it was great. And then I leave. But if they want me to be honest, I go, okay, well, I like this. I didn't like this, but I thought this worked really well. This didn't work. I thought we had some problems with your service here because of whatever the issues are. And so I think the key is to be honest, but there are lots of ways of being honest without being mean.
Yeah, definitely. You just got to find the managed way, the polite way, not the wrong way, I guess.
Yeah.
You kind of have answers, sorry, but what strategies can autistic people use for honesty versus bluntness, or know when to tell the truth and not know when to tell the truth?
Well, I think the key is to know, we always say in TV, know your audience. Or if I'm doing a speaking group, kind of know your audience. So if you have, and I'm sure you will know this with teachers, there are some teachers you can be a little more kind of cheeky with, not rude, but you can have a joke, or and there are some teachers who are just super serious. And you get to know that by experience. So what you need to do, and I think what you need to do is, we always say it, you need to read the room. If I go in front of a group, say I do a speaking event or a demo where I'm a cooking demo, which I do a lot, and if I go in front of a group of, say they're all church pastors, and I'm not going to stand up there and tell kind of risky jokes. Not that I would do risky jokes anyway, but I'm not going to stand up there and use certain words. But if I go in front of a group that's a sporting crowd, then I might be a little more, not using bad language, but I might be a little more free to fool around and have some fun than the other audience. So I think in all of these things, it's just about learning from your experience. And also seeing how people react. I can sometimes see when I'm judging people on the show that I think I'm being kind, but I can see their eyes and they think they're being crushed. So then I just ease up a bit because I'm not there to beat anybody up.
Yeah, I got you. I am kind of curious. What are you picky on when you judge? Like you're just like, no, I don't like this because of this, and like when you eat something and you have that thing, like, is it too much heat that bothers you and you're just like, nope, I don't like it automatically, or what are you picky on, I guess?
Well, no, I actually have a kind of a set system. So the first thing obviously is how it looks. People use that about eating with your eyes, but I want to see that the plate looks attractive, because if a plate comes out looking like you've driven over it with a car, I don't particularly want to eat it anyway. So I want to see how the plate looks. Then I will smell it. And usually when you smell a plate, you can tell if they've overused an ingredient. Say they've used an ingredient like rosemary or curry or something. I can smell immediately whether they've used too much of that ingredient. Then what I'll do is I'll taste each of the individual ingredients. So say there are potatoes, say there's a steak, say there's a tomato, say there's an egg. I'll taste each of those separately to make sure that they've been cooked properly, because the potatoes might be perfect, but they've overcooked the steak. And then finally, I'll eat it all together, a little bit of each, to make sure that it works as a dish. And so I can do that very quickly. And again, people don't often see this, but when food is put in front of us, we usually get about 30 seconds to eat. and then they start asking us questions. So I've actually developed a system where I can do it very quickly. And I can talk about judging food with, and that's my system. And then if there's something obvious, if someone uses too much salt, or they use too much heat, or too much acid with vinegar, or too much of anything, I can tell that immediately. But what you're trying to do, so I never go, I don't like this, because me not liking something doesn't mean that it's badly cooked. It just means I don't like it, and that's meaningless.
You just don't like the part of this in the food.
Yeah, so my job as a judge is to try and explain to you watching at home why a dish that you might think looks good isn't, or why a dish that doesn't look good might be terrific. And I've been doing this for 10 years with hundreds of episodes of television, so now I know how to do it.
So now, you had a background. You told me once you had an interesting story. Can you define your background and your childhood?
Gosh, well, that's a long story. My childhood is in the UK. So I grew up in the UK. And I didn't move to the United States until I was in my 40s. So I grew up in the north of England and then moved down to London, went to college in London. I was going to actually train to be an Episcopalian minister, a pastor. But that didn't happen, obviously. And then I worked in publishing for a long time, in book publishing. But food was always my passion. And then about 12 years ago, maybe longer now, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, I quit my job and I went off to travel around the world. And I ended up writing my first book on food. And on that journey, I met my wife and now wife, and moved to the United States. So my family background is interesting. My father was Indian. My mother was from Wales. So we were a mixed family, which was a challenge and also a real privilege because we got to experience lots of things. We always traveled a lot, and I've traveled all over the world now and still do. And that brought me to the US. And then about 6 years ago, or coming up to 6 years, I became an American citizen.
Sweet.
So
Welcome to America, man.
Thank you. It's fun. So yeah, I'm an American citizen, and I did that. I didn't have to do that. I had a residence visa, but I wanted to be able to vote and to contribute and all of that. And so I became a citizen, which I'm very proud of. And now here I am. If you'd have told me 15 years ago that I'd be living in Los Angeles, talking to you about this when I was doing something totally different, I wouldn't have believed you, but I'm having fun. So that's a very truncated version of my family life, but it's quite a mixture from coming from the north of England to Los Angeles via very elongated routes.
Gotcha. Now, since you said from your UK, how is England different and similar to America?
Well, it's different in many ways. It's a much smaller country, but it's a country with a lot longer history than the United States. In some ways, even though America is a much bigger and more prosperous country than Britain, we still think of America as a kind of younger sibling, because America's been around for 200 and something years, and I always joke, but I've got pots and pans in England that are older than America. So this is still a very young country in the United States, and in that sense it's still finding its way, finding how things work. However successful America's been, it's still a very young country and defining itself. Whereas in England, most things that can happen to a country have happened in England. We've been however many wars, we've had the Romans there. I mean, London is probably close to 4,000 years old. So it's a very different way of looking at life. We take a much more long-term view, whereas I think sometimes in the US, it's almost like a young child wanting everything immediately, and everyone wants kind of instant response. And you don't have that in Europe. People take a lot longer viewpoint.
They enjoy what it sounds like.
I think, yeah. And I think one of the things, though, I love about the US particularly, there's a lot I love about being here, otherwise I wouldn't be here, is the ability for people to succeed, to do things that are outside of, as long as you're good at something, you have the opportunity to succeed. If you're in the UK, it's a small country, but with a big population, 90 million people. And so if you do a job in England, that's your job. So when I was a book publisher, that's what I did. And if I tried to do something else, people are going, well, why are you trying to write? Or why are you trying to cook? Or why are you trying to do something else? Because you're kind of stuck in your own area, your own niche. But in the US, I can do a podcast, I can write a book, I can do TV shows, I can cook for a living, I can speak for a living. And no one asks a question about it other than, is it any good? And so that kind of meritocracy in America, I think, is very important. And it's one of the reasons, it's part of that American dream. It's one of the reasons that America does really well, is because they let people go and experiment. And you can fail. I've failed at plenty in my life, but you're still given the chance to go and do something else again. So, I always tell the story of the man who invented 7-Up. And the reason it's called 7-Up is the first 6 tries at making it failed. And the 7th time was his 7th up to make it. And it was a big success. And that's why he called it 7-Up. And so I think that's a good way of looking at it. In this country, you can fall over, but as long as you've got an idea and you're prepared to work hard,
you can bounce back.
You can achieve really great things. So that's one of the things that I really love about this, that you don't necessarily have in Europe.
Yeah. I bet. I got you what you mean. So now I want to talk about a little bit about your nephew, because he has autism, and that you want to be on the show if you had him, I guess is the way to put it, or wouldn't it be your nephew? So what is your relationship with your nephew, and can you describe his personality?
Well, I'm hesitant just because I want to respect the privacy of other people. So I never really talk about people's private lives, just because whether they're relatives or they're on TV, or that's for them. So I'm cautious about doing that. But I do have a really fun relationship. I like hanging out with him. I'm also very respectful when he wants time to himself, which sometimes he does if we have a big event, and sometimes that can be a little bit much for him. Then he might want to disappear and just be on a room on his own, and so there's that side of it. But I don't want to talk too much about that, just because I think that's for him to talk about, not for me.
Okay, I understand. But out of curiosity, has he changed you at all in any perspective? Like, has he changed you in the way you've seen life? Has he changed the way that you've seen the world? I mean, has he changed you at all in a good way?
I think that one of the things that you do find sometimes is there's a lot of repetition of a question or something like that. And if I hadn't encountered that before, what I do find is that that's something that I'm less. It's if you're not used to it, that can be very frustrating. And now it's something that I've become a lot more kind of accepting of. I know there'll be a period where there's a lot of questions about stuff just because of who he is. And now so I think from that point of view, I like that I've probably become a lot more understanding. And I think also I've read more about, autism because of that. So, I think just having someone that you're related to who has autism just makes you more willing to go and find out. If you're a good person anyway, you try and read more about it. I'm interested when I hear people who have autism talking about it. So from that point of view, I think it's been very interesting.
Good. I understand what you mean. I bet it's been a journey with him, so it's been a good journey.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey.
So on the Judges Compete episode of Cutthroat, you played for Autism, the Nerve and Development. Are there any other charities that you played for?
There are, not necessarily ones that there's a few different non-profits that I work with, and there's one right now that's doing a really great job during the lockdown period called Convoy of Hope. They work all around the world and the United States. They do a lot of work. They feed 300,000 children around the world every day through their programs, and also they've fed almost 20 million meals to Americans during the lockdown. So, a lot of people aren't earning any money right now. A lot of people don't have access to great food. And so that's an organization that I like a great deal. They're called Convoy of Hope, and they're feeding a lot of people in the US right now. So they're very important to me, and I do a lot with them. And then there are other non-profits that are particularly looking after the restaurant industry. So obviously a lot of the restaurants, some are beginning to open again now, but the restaurants have been closed for nearly 4 months. And so chefs aren't earning salaries, servers aren't earning salaries, hosts. And so a lot of those people who exist because of tips and gratuities as well as the basic salary are really struggling. So, I like to support. Guy Fieri has one called Restaurant Relief USA. There's one called the Golden Rule Charity. So these are people who need our help. So those are some of the others that I like to keep an eye out and help. There's so many. And I think the key is right now, if you're in the cinema business, go and help support cinemas where people aren't earning any money. Go and help. If you're in the theater, go and help there. Whatever the industry right now, whatever the area, there's going to be people in need. So I think we're all struggling a bit with cash, I guess, because no one's earning much right now. So I think if you can and you have any money and you have anything, people should just go and support who they can. But those are the ones that I keep a particular eye out for.
So now I'm curious, how do you become an Iron Chef judge?
That was a very interesting thing. So not long after I got married, so 10 years ago now, I was asked to go and meet the producers of Iron Chef. Their offices are actually very close to me here. And they were actually doing auditions for a judge for a show called The Next Iron Chef, where they chose a new Iron Chef, which was a big show, very big show. When it was on, it was the biggest show on the network. And they were looking for a third judge. And I went to meet them, and for whatever reason, they offered me that job, and then I ended up judging lots of Iron Chefs as well as Next Iron Chefs. So I did that for many years. Iron Chef is also on a break right now, so I haven't done that for a while, but I must have done, with Next Iron Chefs and Iron Chefs, I must have done over 100 shows of that, maybe less, I don't know, I haven't got the count in front of me, but I did a lot of Iron Chefs. And that was really fun because that's a different level. So those chefs, both the ones challenging and the ones, the Iron Chefs themselves, are some of the best chefs anywhere in the world. So for them to cook and eat their food all day was really fun. And I always looked forward to that.
Gotcha. Hey, if you eat, that's a good job right there. I mean,
it can be. Sometimes if they've had some of the food sometimes on Cutthroat Kitchen wasn't so much fun to eat. But on Iron Chef, it was usually pretty special.
Hey, I'll eat anything except tomatoes. I can't eat tomatoes. I can't make. I'm sorry, but I can't. Now, you're also a writer's wife. So what do you write exactly, and who inspired you to become a writer?
I do. I write features for magazines. I write I've written 3 books, and I've written my podcast, which I write, which is, a lot of writing. That the writing of a season of my podcast is probably about the length of a book. So that's a lot of words. I always loved to write, and I had a food blog many years ago, and I got to know people like Anthony Bourdain, other great writers, and I just enjoyed doing it. And I was lucky that newspapers in the United Kingdom asked me if I would write some food things for them, and I did. And then I there was another website that I did a lot for, and so it's just become something I do. Right now, I'm not writing as many features or books just because I'm too busy doing other things. Right now, I'm really enjoying speaking events, cooking demos, food history talks, things like that. But that also involves writing, because you have to write lectures, you have to write kind of recipes for all kinds of different things. I love the process of writing. It's sometimes a little tough because sometimes you want to write and your head doesn't, so you end up not writing anything much as you'd like to. You get writer's block. But I actually do love the process.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I like to write too, but then sometimes mine just kaploopy and won't let me write, like you said.
Yeah, it's there's no kind of what's the word? There's no sometimes you think it's going to be a simple process, and sometimes I sit down thinking I'm going to have a great day of writing, and I end up writing about 50 words of rubbish. And other days I sit down and I think I'm going to have a really bad day, and I end up writing 2,000 words that I'm really pleased with. So you can't. The key, I think, of learning, and that I learned from other people, much better writers than I am, is not to beat yourself up. If you don't have a good day, it's fine. And I think that's true in life as well. You know, sometimes, particularly now in lockdown, it's fine not to have a good day. You know, some days I'm really busy. Some days you just go, actually, I'm having a really bad day. I'm going to sit and watch TV.
Yeah, we've all had those days. Everyone has their days. Now,
Yeah.
out of curiosity, what are your writing goals do you have in the future?
You know, I set some goals, so they're a little wider. So I go, yeah, I'd love to write. One of the things I've learned is that writing, having specific goals can be really useful, but it's also really tough, because if you'd have told me 15 years ago that this is what I'd be doing for a living, I'd have laughed at you. I thought I was going to be a book publisher for the rest of my working life, and I'm definitely not that anymore. So what I think is more important is so I go, I want to specific goals. I want to write. Then I have some more. But I don't look at it too specifically. Do I want to write another book? Perhaps. What do I want to write? More podcasts, certainly, because I love doing that. Do I want to write more features? Maybe, if they're interesting. A lot of times right now, I get asked to write stuff that's not that exciting, so I don't do it. I don't want to write just for the sake of it. You know, do I really want to write about the top 10 restaurants in LA serving X? Not particularly. But there are some really good, interesting things to write about my travels. I mean, so what I want to do, I have a saying that I put everywhere. It's what I sign in my books or on my photographs, which says, go everywhere, eat everything. And that's basically my goals for life. I want to travel more. I want to eat great food. I want to meet amazing people, and then find opportunities to write about that.
So now you also done a lot of I've heard. So what type of public speaking have you done?
I've done all kinds of public speaking. So I've done history lectures where I talk to departments in universities. I did one fairly recently at University College in Irvine, where I talked about the history of fish and chips, which has actually got an amazing history. Or I've done lectures to, or not lectures, I've done speeches to well-being organizations. There's a terrific organization called Peace Love, which uses art as a way of promoting mental health kind of development. And that's a really interesting organization. So I've done that. But then one of my favorites is to do cooking demos. So I'll go up and I'll demonstrate 2 dishes, whatever. And while I do that, I talk about the food, the history of the food. And then I do a lot of that in hotels and get to taste them. And then I also do a lot for the non-profits, where they'll ask me to go and cook for a smaller group, spend time with them there. So it's a really good opportunity to connect with people. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is public speaking.
Gotcha. Now, how do you engage a live audience? How do you get them intrigued into whatever topic you're talking about?
That's a great question. Well, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm never sure that I'm going to be an expert on it. But I think you have to have a good, lively personality. You have a subject that's going to be interesting to them. So again, you need to read your audience, know that it's going to be something that they're going to find fun. The audience. So sometimes I'll have someone come up on stage and help me cook. So they're there. If it's a business, I can have the head of the business come up and help me cook. I think you have to, just try and be engaging. And I think a lot of that is down to experience. I don't have any nerves. I don't get particularly nervous before I go on stage. I like talking to people, so I don't worry about it. And I think that helps. Have some bad jokes. Tell lots of bad dad jokes, because people seem to like bad dad jokes.
I like dad jokes, so.
Yeah, they're great. And I think then the other thing is to have I always like to have a section in every event where I have question and answers, cooking an ingredient or the history of something or my travels. And then once I do that, then it's easier to engage them. But you have to work at it. You can't take it for granted because, I've seen some people, and me included, where I've done events and it hasn't gone well. And it's because I've maybe been too complacent.
Okay, yeah, I understand that completely. Now, you're also a big celebrity, which is awesome. So, how did you become the celebrity?
Well, I'm I'm going to question that first bit. I never say that celebrity is not a word I ever use. I'm just some bloke who's on TV who happens to have a fun life.
Yeah, you're a
So
celebrity, man.
never like to. Nah. Yeah, well, we'll have that argument another time. But I mean, here's the thing: is I think it's just I'm lucky enough to do a job where I happen to be on TV. And the key of that is to do that well, to be very appreciative of the fact that I get to do that. And if I do get to do that and get to be well known, then at least I should two things: be respectful of the people who do all the hard work, and we talked about that earlier, the crew, but also be aware that I can use this to do some good. So if I come and talk to you on your podcast and we can get more information about autism out to people, if we go and work for a non-profit and I cook a meal, or if I go and speak at an event on behalf of an organization. So I think, for want of a better word, if you're being well known because you're on TV or films or whatever people are, it's fun kitchen equipment to play with, or all kinds of stuff that people might do, which is lovely. But at the same time, it's a responsibility. And one of the things I don't think is right is when you see some people who are very fortunate, but kind of don't seem to work very hard to support other people. To be fair, that's very few. I think most people, particularly in the food industry, if you look at people on the Food Network, everyone I know, everyone has a non-profit or a cause that they want to promote. Everyone has one, so that's really good. So it's kind of it's just I'm fortunate to do it, and I'll do it as long as they want me to keep doing it. And then when people don't, I'll go and do something else.
Gotcha. I feel like everyone with like the nonprofits is on a mission. If that makes any sense. Like this is a non-profit podcast, I guess is the way to say it, and I'm on a mission.
Yeah, I think you've got to have, if we don't have causes in life if we don't have things in life that mean something to us, then life is pretty empty. And you see it sometimes with young people in sports or young people in any business. They're suddenly in a situation where they're earning a huge amount of money, but they haven't developed a cause or a calling and when they do, then it makes a big difference to their life, because they realize, apart from anything else, it makes you realize that there are lots of people out in this world, and we've traveled all over the world, seeing it, whose existence is a lot more challenging than ours, whether they're people trying to feed their kids or stay healthy or any of those things. And so if we don't use whatever little kind of fame or celebrity we have to a good cause, then we're probably not good people. So at the very least, we should try and do something decent.
Yeah, do something at least nice.
Yeah.
So you're a big cooker. That's why I got into cooking, honestly. Now, what got you into cooking, obviously, and what do you like to cook?
Again, that's a great question. So like a lot of people, it was my family. My family always loved to cook. My family loved to talk about food and share it. So, I have a WhatsApp group with my family, and every day it's pictures of food that we're eating or cooking. So even when I was a little kid, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was always watching people cook and always cooking, and then always eating out at restaurants. Obviously now during the lockdown, it's been really good. So I've, from a learning how to cook point of view, because often I'm not at home so often, and I don't get much chance to be in my own kitchen. So now I've had great opportunities to be cooking. So I've been cooking. What I like to do is to take dishes from countries that I've visited and try and replicate those at home. And I cook a lot of Indian food because of my father coming from India. That's a food that I love. But I also, we've recently been in Italy or Greece, or we've been in Japan, we've been in the Philippines, we've been all over. And so I like to try and cook some of the food from those countries. We've been in the Middle East. We've been I like to try and look at some of the amazing food. And again, I'm very fortunate in that I've been to these countries, so I get to experience it firsthand, and to prepare some of that. So that's been what I've been trying to do on this. And also, like a lot of people, I'm baking bread. And I'm not a good baker, but after lockdown, I'm a better baker. So I'm better than I used to be.
Gotcha. What bread do you usually make? You like banana bread or just solid bread, I guess?
Oh, I don't make a lot of sweeter breads, more buns and loaves of bread and that kind of thing.
Ah, nice.
And just simple stuff that we're going to enjoy. Bagels I like to make, just things that we can actually eat. And I'm not just, again, I don't want to waste food. We waste too much food in this country. And so I want to make food so that we'll eat. So I don't want to just do it for the sake of it. And some people, I think, are practicing. And as long as all the food gets eaten, I don't mind.
Yeah, my mom's like that. She does actually a whole unit on food wasting. So you guys
Well,
have
that's
common.
Yeah, well, we waste about a third of our food in this country, and when you think that people are going to starve tonight in the United States for lack of food, then that's really something
sad.
that I find really crazy.
Yeah,
Well, it's sad that we're the rich country in the world, and then for lots of reasons, and that's not a political. Lots of particularly young kids in this country, won't eat properly tonight, and that to me is just wrong.
and disgusting. Very disgusting to hear.
Yeah, and again, that's not even political. It's as you said, it's just disgusting.
It is. So I'm amazed with cooking because I'm a terrible cook. I just started. So how do you not overwhelm yourself in the kitchen? To be honest with you, because I'll overwhelm myself with a snap of my fingers.
The key with it is there's a saying that I always have when talking to chefs is about learning the basics first. And we all want to go and cook like we see an Iron Chef cook, or people want to cook like Bobby Flay, but Bobby's been doing that for 30 years, probably more. So he's got a lot of experience. So my thing is, we have a saying that there's a musical saying. They say before you go and play jazz, you have to learn how to play the piano. So go and learn the basics. Go and learn knifings, so you learn how they work together. And the other thing, and I think this is something that's actually very relevant to people who are listening who might have autism, is to create a process. When I cook, say I'm cooking a dish that might take, I don't know, say it takes an hour. I'm making up a number now, but the first half hour will be process of preparing everything. The French have a word or a phrase that says mise en place. It means everything in its place. So if you have a dish that has onions and it has garlic and it has herbs and it has meat and it has, prepare all of that, chop everything up first and lay it out. Lay it out on your kitchen counter. And then when you come to cook, to assemble it, it's like putting it together. So it's almost like, imagine if you have a Lego set, you'll put all the red pieces together, the blue pieces together, the yellow pieces. So when you need one of those, you go and reach for it. So learning the processes of cooking by doing that mise en place, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I'll have to remember that. Mise en place. Sounds like me on plastic, but whatever.
Mise en place.
Mise en place. I'll remember that.
It basically means everything in its place.
In its
place.
Go and
good. It's fun.
That sounds like a good quote.
Excellent.
So now I'm going to ask you some personal questions to you just for fun. So what is your paradise meal since you're a cook, and why is it your favorite?
Sure. I think there are different ones, but if I had to choose, kind of meal, I think a lot of it would be proper British fish and chips. And I think a lot of that is to do with memory, because when you eat a great meal, you're not just eating the ingredients that are in front of you. A lot of it is going to bring back memories of great meals. So there are dishes now that I create that my mum used to cook, and neither of my parents are with us anymore. But there are dishes I create that are close to what my mum used to cook. And when I smell them cooking or when I eat them, they bring back kind of memories. And so for me, that the fish and chips has that, because I remember as a kid, we'd go to a fish and chip shop, big thing in England, and we'd get fish and chips, and the smell of fish and chips and the vinegar that you would put on the chips and the kind of surrounding of it. So that would be my kind of great meal.
Yeah, that sounds like a good meal, and I'm sorry about your loss with your parents.
Thank you. I mean, it's the nature of getting older, but I had wonderful, wonderful memories with them. So I'm very fortunate. A lot of people don't always have both their parents or don't always have great relationships with their parents, and I had terrific times with both of mine. So I feel very fortunate.
I do too. I mean, they drive me crazy. I'll admit it.
Oh yeah, they'll do that.
But
they'll do that.
But I've had some fantastic times with them.
Good.
So, now, what is your favorite movie or TV show, and why do you like it?
Ooh, great question. So my favorite movie is an old movie going back to probably the 40s. It's called A Matter of Life and Death, and it was a film with an actor called David Niven, who was one of my heroes, a great kind of English actor. And it's just a beautifully put together film. It's about someone during the Second World War who is killed and comes back to life, and then by mistake, and then he has to go to heaven, to kind of a court in heaven, to argue his case to stay alive because he's fallen in love. And it's just it's a beautifully made romantic movie, and it's really, really nicely done. So that would be my favorite. And television, gosh, I think it's hard to think about individual movies, individual television shows, but I love police procedurals. I love long, like 10 episode whodunits, where you don't know until the last minute who makes stuff, so who's killed someone or who's done something. I love crime shows. Those are probably my favorites. Interestingly, I don't watch a lot of cooking shows, because it's that's what I do for a living. So I don't necessarily want to sit and watch it when I'm at home. Although some of them are really good, I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to sit and watch other people cook when I'm at home, because I do that for a living.
Yeah, I see that. So now, what has been your favorite vacation that you've ever taken, and why do you enjoy that vacation very much?
Well, we've I've been to however many countries, probably 80 something, and so I've had some amazing experiences. I've walked on the Great Wall of China, and I've been to see the Taj Mahal in India, and I've my wife and I have hiked around New Zealand, and we've been to, you name it, we've been through the Philippines, we've been all over, and so a lot of them have been really exciting. I think there are certain areas that when you're standing looking at, and I mentioned them, the Great Wall of China, which is amazing, and you're seeing the Taj Mahal in India at sunrise. So those are very special ones. But I love just going to new countries and experiencing them. I think another one was going to the north of India and picking tea at one of the tea plantations. That was amazing as well. Traveling through Africa. And I think one of the greatest for me was what's called the Trans-Siberian Express, which goes from the east of Russia all the way across to the west to St. Petersburg. It's like 8 days on a train, going through deserts and ice, areas that are covered in ice. And I mean, it's incredible. And that was one of my favorites as well. But if you asked me tomorrow, I'd probably give you different answers.
It's all right. Okay, other than cooking, what are some of your personal interests, and why do you enjoy those?
I'm a great fan of watching soccer. So I watch that a lot in the UK because I was brought up watching that. My team is one of the lower division teams, so no one knows who they are. So it's not one of the big teams, but I still look for their scores every week and watch the games on YouTube when I can. And so I love watching that. And that's, so in terms of sport, I'm very British still. So I still watch soccer, cricket, and rugby. I don't watch any American sports. I don't watch basketball or baseball or American football. I've never, and not because they're bad, I just don't know them, and I've never really got into them.
Yeah, you're just
I'm sure, they're terrific sports. Sorry, I missed that.
I said you're following your ethnicity. basically.
Yeah, very much. I was brought up watching these sports, and they're still kind of what I grew up with. I'm obsessive about history. I love reading history books, and that's why I do a food history podcast. I like to think about, so I read a lot of history. I love. I can't do a lot of it right now. I love walking, hiking, that kind of. When we get chance, I love to do that and go for long walks. And traveling, I think, is my biggest passion. I love to travel. I, you know, I if I had my kind of time, my wife and I would just be out on the road the whole time, just traveling around.
Ah, gotcha. I would travel the whole world if I could, around the whole
Well,
globe.
there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it to see. 195 countries or something. I've still got lots to go.
Yeah, you have to be from your birth to death, basically. The whole world. So now this is the
Definitely.
last question. Are there any good memories that you want to tell our viewers about? If you do, why do you remember that memory the most? Now, before you answer it, I want a good memory and a funny memory.
Oh, let's have a think. That's a great question. So my good memories are about great meals that I've shared. And so I'll tell you a story about being in Senegal in Africa. And I met people while I was there. I was traveling, writing my first book. And one of them invited me to come and have dinner with his family. And I sat in the courtyard of their home, and they shared a meal with me, and they serve it on a big communal plate, and it's rice and fish and peppers and all kinds of. It was really delicious. But what I remember was them, all of the hosts, the mother and the daughters, getting all of the best bits of fish, the best bits of food, and putting them on my side of the plate. So as the guest, I was the kind of honored guest and got all of the best food. And that kind of hospitality is one of my best memories. It's one of the best meals I've ever eaten, not just because it was delicious, which it was, but just because of the communal element. And I still think of that as one of the best meals I've ever had in my life. So that's a great memory. A funny memory. I'm trying to think now. Oh gosh.
It could be a
Well,
cut.
I've had so many. I've had so many when I've been traveling. I remember being on the Trans-Siberian Express and being. They had these rather all the like, if you weren't from any of the countries, Russia, Mongolia, China, you had these women on there who were very kind of stern and strict, and they were very kind of in charge of you. And one time I was out on the platform when the train stopped at a station, and if they called you to get back on the train was going to leave. And I remember one of these women just grabbing me by the collar because I was down on the platform and literally lifting me up with one arm and bringing me onto the train in front of everyone because I had to be on the train. And she was like, yeah, this woman was strong, and she literally lifted me with one arm and threw me back on the train. And that was very embarrassing, but it was very funny later.
At least you didn't slug you around.
Yeah, but at least, she was doing it to be kind because she didn't want me to miss the train because there wasn't going to be another one for another week.
Yeah, I don't
and
blame
I'd be stuck in.
I don't blame her.
Yeah, so she was doing a good job, but it was a bit of a surprise to suddenly get lifted by one-handed by a Russian train guard.
Yeah. So now I think that's all. Is there anything you'd like to say to our viewers before we head out of here?
No, just if people want to go and find me on social media, you can find me at Simon Majumdar on everything. And also, if people are interested in podcasts, obviously I hope they are because they're listening to you, go and check out Eat My Globe, which is my own podcast, which is fun. And we talk about all kinds of things, all kinds of food history. And we interview people like Alton Brown. So you'll hear more about him on there. And just, and the other thing I always say at the end of all these now when I do them is just, we're in tough times. So just be kind to everyone, be nice, and let's see if we can get through all of this together.
All right, I think we can. So thanks again, Simon. I appreciate doing this, and cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining for this episode. Please tune in for another episode coming in very soon. I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble. Thank you very much.